I need to tell you about 2 lies that we hear all the time in addiction recovery, even throughout Overeaters Anonymous. And it's really important to recognize what they are so that when you hear them, you will not believe them. Believing them will cripple your program and be very, very discouraging to you. It saved me years once I figured this out. In fact, I don't think I ever would have made my way to the other side of recovery if I hadn't realized that these things are not true. When I believed them, I tried and failed and tried and failed and tried and failed into the program, and I was never able to make progress at all. It wasn't until I was able to understand these things differently and the truths that are there that I was able to break the pattern I was in and find my way all the way through my recovery to the other side. So here are the 2 lies, and if you're interested, you can find I have a video that I have done. You'll see below the 2 lies of addiction recovery, which is a much longer video that gets into this a lot deeper. Excuse me, a lot deeper. So here's the first lie. Let's see if you can finish this phrase. Once an addict, always an addict. Did you know? Have you heard that? It's not true. It is a lie. And I'm so sorry if anybody's ever said that to you. And I'm sorry if you've ever believed it. Because when we believe that, then we think there's no hope of our recovery. Not really. Because even, at least for me, when I heard that, when I came into this program, I was so excited to find something. When I came into the 12-step program, I was so excited to find what I thought was the end-all be-all, the solution to my problem. Yes, I did believe in a higher power that could restore me to wholeness. Yes. But then I just couldn't figure it out. And as I heard this phrase, once an addict, always an addict, and add to that these other catchphrases that we'll hear all the time, that while we're in a meeting, our addiction is in the parking lot doing push-ups, all of these things that just really, the verbiage can be really discouraging to us as we think that maybe there's no hope for us. For me, the thing that I believed for a very long time is that the best this program could give me was that I would be both willing and able to just white knuckle my way through cravings for the rest of my life. Because when I heard that phrase, once an addict, always an addict, what that told me is that I would always have to live with cravings. I would always have to live with the temptation to want to eat in dangerous ways, foods that were destroying my body and potentially would cost me my life one day. That I would always want to do that, that I always have the urge and the craving. It was very discouraging to hear because that's a painful way to live. Like having those cravings and those urges and those temptations is so uncomfortable, and it takes so much energy to navigate them. And so I kept trying and failing in the program, trying so hard to let God help me to be willing and able to white knuckle my way through, and then failing and feeling like I had failed, and that He could do His part if only I could do mine. But I will tell you the truth. The truth is that the promise of recovery is full and complete recovery. I'm on the other side now. I don't live with those temptations and feelings and urges in my chest at all. I don't. I live free of them. I'm not just an addict, a food addict, pretending to be a normal eater. I'm actually a normal eater. I have a normal appetite for normal things. And that means even what used to be my binge foods, sugar, white flour, I still eat those sometimes. And I don't mean sometimes like when I give myself permission on special occasions. I mean if I feel like it. What I have found is that working the 12 steps of addiction recovery really allowed me to let go of my insatiable appetite, because working the 12 steps of addiction recovery invited my higher power into this space to satisfy me in ways food never could. It was a way I was trying to use food to satisfy something it can't satisfy, because I had a spiritual need, an emotional and spiritual hunger that I was trying to use food to satisfy. Food is really great for satisfying physical hunger and physical cravings, but not emotional and spiritual ones, not at all. And so as I tried to use food for that, I just found it to be an insatiable equation. There was never enough food for it to be enough food. But as soon as I figured out how to let God come in and solve those spiritual and emotional problems, I learned how to be quickly satisfied. And from that place, I no longer had the same appetite for food that I once did. And so now that's where I'm at in my life. I use God in the way that I used to use food. It's His job in the first place, and He does it better. He does it faster. It lasts way longer than the food ever did. I'm just not hungry for food the way that I used to be. I am a normal eater. Now, this lie, once an addict, always an addict, leads me into the second one. There's a lot of people who promote this idea that in order to successfully work the 12 steps of addiction recovery, you have to be abstinent from your addiction. In Overeaters Anonymous, when you read that book, the way that that's positioned is you have to identify your trigger foods, your red foods, your binge foods, your alcoholic foods, those kinds of things that you have to recognize them and get them out of your life. You can't work the program successfully as long as they are in your life. And so if you're struggling with abstaining from those things, then clearly you're not doing your program correctly. So you have to keep starting over. Or maybe you'll have a sponsor who will put even more rigid practices into the lineup of what they're already asking you to do as a way to try to control the food out of your life. I have to tell you, and I'm happy to tell you, this is a lie. You do not have to first take the food out of your life in order to work the program successfully. In fact, I will tell you that in my experience, the opposite was true. I tried and failed because I believed that I had to wrestle the food out of my life first in order for God to have room to show up and do his part, to help me, to give me the miracle of being willing and being able to do that for the rest of my life. Well, first of all, that's a little bit of a circular problem. If I think I have to first take the food out of my life so that God could come in and help take the food out of my life, well, if I could do it before he showed up, then what do I need God for in the first place, right? So that creates a little bit of a circular dilemma. But the other thing is that as long as I was in that space, I would try and fail and then go back to step one. Try, fail, go back to step one. And for me, the point of my failure was always step 4. I would get to step 3. There's not a single step that says stop eating any kind of way. There's not a certain step that says stop doing your addiction. But step 3 does say to give up your will to God and to try to do things his way. And for me, I thought, well, what else in my life could possibly show my willingness to give my life to God and to give up my addiction, this thing I keep holding on to that takes up so much room in my life. There's not room for him. Clearly, step 3 is where I'm supposed to do this. And that's promoted heavily throughout 12-step addiction recovery groups. So I would get to step 3, try to give it up, and then move on to step 4. Step 4 is a place where you go in and you're doing an inventory of all the things in your life, the pain that has been accumulating, the times that, the resentments you hold, things that have caused you fear, things you've done that you regret, all of these things. That there's just a real big melting pot of pain that you're delving into very deeply. And for me, especially at that time, I was still in the middle of a lot of those painful experiences and traumatic events. So to try to move into that place without my addiction, which the food, that's what I knew for sure could give me a relief, and I needed it all the time, which is why I was eating it all the time, feverishly binging, to go into a place where I was kind of rubbing that wound of all of that pain, and I didn't yet know how to use my higher power for relief. I did know how to use food, and so I'd go back into the food and like, I guess I messed up on the steps again. Now I have to start over. I have to go back to step 1. And so I did that over and over again. And so I didn't think I was doing the steps right. And unfortunately, I stayed in that pattern for 15 years because that's how I thought I had to do the steps. It wasn't until I hit my last rock bottom and came back into the program that somebody told me, hey, what you're dealing with is not a sugar addiction. You are dealing with an addiction to overeating. So let's just, figure that out. And so I tried to give up the overeating, whatever, and it worked. And then I had a cool miracle where I didn't have an inclination to do it anymore. After a few days, like I white knuckled my way through the cravings for a few days, and then it just lifted. But then I switched sponsors, and during that time, I went back to the food. And then I got a new sponsor, and I really did try to give the food up again. And I just couldn't. So what ended up happening is I just kept working the steps, because that was my sponsor. She was a big book sponsor, meaning she just wanted to help me institute like the practice of the 12 steps in my life. So I just kept doing the 12 steps. She wasn't policing my food. And as I kept doing those, like 1 through 9, those are kind of once and done steps. You should be able to do them and walk away. And then you move into 10 and 11 and 12. Those are called the maintenance steps, and you'll do them every day for the rest of your life. So when you do that, when I was in that space of moving finally past step 4, even though I was still kind of eating crazy, I've experienced some really cool things. I continued to progress. I was still eating, but also experiencing really cool things. I moved into 10 and 11 and 12 and started experiencing really cool things. Still eating a little crazy, but not as crazy. Kept doing 10 and 11 and 12 and finding and discovering how to let my higher power to bring me peace and emotional and spiritual regulation in a way that caused my appetite to change. I wasn't hungry anymore because I wasn't an emotional and spiritual wreck. Whereas before I was always in this place of discomfort, trying to find comfort through food. I wasn't emotionally uncomfortable anymore because of what I was learning by doing 10 and 11 and 12. God came in and fixed the things I was trying to fix. And in that space, I no longer had a use for the food. And so here I am 3 years later, and I have a normal relationship with food. It's amazing. If I had continued to believe that I had to stop eating in order for me to do the steps successfully, I never would have progressed past step 4. I don't think I ever would have gotten through step 4. But I did as I continued to eat. And so I want to tell you how important it is to just continue to do the 12 steps to the best of your ability. As far as you understand them, keep doing them. Your understanding will continue to increase as you keep inviting God into that space. And it just gets easier and easier until finally, like, you'll see, like, you have no use for your addiction anymore. You're in such a calm place, or at least you know how to get back to a calm place so quickly without food. You won't have a use for food. And so that is a lie. It's a lie that you have to give up the food in order to work the steps successfully. No matter what's going on with your food, you keep working those steps and you will find that the food will take care of itself. It will be the natural, organic, secondary process that comes as you work the steps. So I hope that's helpful to you. I'll talk to you soon.